This tutorial is going to be the first in a series of tutorials about Google Web Toolkit, or GWT for short. In these tutorials I hope to step-by-step explain how to program in Google Web Toolkit and how to develop some applications in Google Web Toolkit and how to do this in a proper manner. Before I really kick off this tutorial, I would like to state that I don't really have a script for these tutorials. As a matter of fact, for the most part I'm improvising them as I go along, even though I have given some thought as for what I'm going to show or what I'm going to tell in advance. Next to that, even though I just mentioned that this tutorial is going to be the first in a series of tutorials about GWT, I am actually not really going to show anything of GWT in this tutorial. Instead, in this tutorial, I'm going to focus on the development environment in which you can program in GWT, which is the Eclipse IDE. So in this tutorial I am going to show all of you how to install Eclipse, how to install Java, which is a requirement for running Eclipse, and how to use certain features in Eclipse. And I'm going to do this with a normal Java program. Why am I going to do this with a Java program? Well, it's slightly easier than setting up GWT at the site. It would make this tutorial also useful for people who don't want to do anything in Google Web Toolkit but do want to know how Eclipse works. And yeah, for the very least, in GWT we're also going to program in Java, so I might as well show some of the basic features in a normal Java program. So that being a little introduction as to what I'm going to do, let's just dive right into it. And we're going to start by installing the Java JDK. The Java JDK you will have to download from the internet. Let me just show you where. Java was originally developed by a company named Sun, which was fairly recently acquired by Oracle. But because I've always been so used to actually Java being developed by Sun, I'm still going to go to the original java.sun.com website, which is going to redirect me to Oracle. So if I would like to download the Java JDK, I will have to go to Java 2nd edition, Java SE. Then I want to download the JDK. The current version is Java 7 Update 7. So I would press download in this case. Naturally I have to accept the license agreement. And what I usually do is I download the Windows x86 offline installer, which I'm not going to do right now to save time. As a matter of fact, I have already downloaded it, and I have it in my software folder here. Next to that, another thing that we need is of course the Eclipse software itself. So for that you can go to www.eclipse.org. And if you go to downloads, you can actually download Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers, which is the most elaborate package that is being offered of the Eclipse IDE. There are several different packages, each with different purposes and different functionality. Java EE is used for web applications. So happens to have, as I mentioned, the most rich functionality. And this is the version that we will need if we are going to install Google Web Toolkit later on. Depending on your system, you can either download the 32-bit or the 64-bit version. In my case, I would like to download the 32-bit version, but again, to save you all the time and not having to watch a boring download in this tutorial, I have downloaded the package already. This is the latest package called Eclipse Juno, which came out, well, I think about 2 months ago by now. I'm not quite sure. Fairly recent. So that's the Eclipse that I will be using for all my tutorials. If you are using an older version, for example Eclipse Indigo, which is the version that came prior to this, it doesn't make that much of a difference. The buttons are pretty much still in the same place. The color scheme is slightly different. For these tutorials it will not matter that much. The other file that you may see here is the GWT 2.4 SDK. What we're going to do with that, I'm probably going to show in my next tutorial when I'm actually going to install the GWT development environment in Eclipse. Okay, so that was as for the downloads. So let me first just install Java. Of course, I'm going to run the installer, which takes a few seconds to prepare. And it seems to be taking a few seconds longer than I would like to, probably because I'm recording. There we go. So I'm just going to press next. And yes, I would like to install my JDK there. I want to install the Java runtime environment as well, which is necessary for executing Java programs. The JDK itself is for the development of programs. Even though I assume if you're watching this tutorial you have some Java background already, so typically I wouldn't have to explain this. So let's go next and run the installer. So while this is running, I might be able to explain a little bit about Eclipse itself. Eclipse basically is an integrated development environment, which essentially means a program for developing software. And Eclipse is open source, meaning it's done by basically a group of hobbyists, people who enjoyed developing software. And the beauty about Eclipse, and that's why it has become such a popular IDE, is because the functionality of Eclipse is extendable. You can actually install plugins and thus further extend the functionality of Eclipse. So let me just hold right there. And okay, so I'm going to install my GRE in the same folder as well, which naturally I need to run, for example, Java applets. So yeah, as I mentioned, Eclipse can be extended with plugins, which means that the functionality of Eclipse can be extended. And one such plugin, which I will be installing in my next tutorial, is the Google Web Toolkit plugin, which essentially adds the functionality to Eclipse to conveniently develop Google Web Toolkit applications. No, still running and running. We're done. Okay, close. Now it's very likely going to prompt me to install Java FX as well. No, it's not going to. As a matter of fact, it's simply asking me to register. In this case, I don't want to register. Alright, then before I'm going to install Eclipse, I'm going to show one more optional step to complete the installation of Java. This step is, as I mentioned, optional. You don't have to do it, but it's considered a good habit if you do it. I'm going to set some environmental variables so that certain software that needs to know where the JDK is located, and Eclipse is not one of those software, does know where to find it. So since I'm running Windows XP, my computer is a bit old, unfortunately. I have to go to Control Panel. As you can see, my Java is installed. I can double click on that. I can even click on About and see I have Java version 7 update 7, which is the version that we didn't download just now, but I could have downloaded. So for this environmental variable, I go to System, then to Advanced, Environmental Variables, and I'm going to create a new variable here. And I'm going to name this variable Java Home. And I'm going to point this Java Home to where my Java JDK is located, which is under Programming Files. This takes too long. Java JDK 7. So I'm just going to copy this path and set it as my Java Home variable. Make sure to point to the root folder, then simply press OK. So as you can see, Java Home is added here. Then I'm going to create another variable, which I'm simply going to name Java SDK, which I'm going to point to the bin folder in my SDK installation, where typically all the binary files for compiling Java software are located. So again, I'm going to copy the path and store there. So now I have a Java SDK variable as well. And to ensure that I can use my command prompt in my Windows to actually execute Java commands, I'm going to reference the Java SDK bin folder in my path variable as well. Since I just created a variable for that, I'm not going to copy the whole path. Instead, I'm going to reference this variable. So I'm going to edit my path, go all the way to the end, and simply add percentage Java SDK percentage, and just for tidiness, I'm going to finish with a semicolon. Okay, so that's that. So since I changed my environmental variables, for the changes to actually happen, I would need to reboot my computer. Since I don't want to stop this recording, I am not going to reboot my computer. Thus, I also cannot show that I can actually use Java in the command line prompt, so you'll just have to take my word for it. However, I may want to consider, maybe I'll just quickly show it in my next tutorial. Okay, so that was Java. Like I mentioned, the environmental variables don't need to work for Eclipse, so thus I can perfectly well continue on without actually rebooting. So after having installed my Java JDK, now I can actually install Eclipse. And installing Eclipse is pretty easy. As a matter of fact, it's a one-step installation. Basically, I have a zip file here which contains the whole of Eclipse. So let's just open it up in my WinRAR. Then I'm simply gonna extract the entire contents to my C drive, because I like to have it at a convenient location, so directly under my C would be good. Let's just wait for the unpacking to finish. That will probably take, well, it's not gonna take 14 minutes, probably not 3 either. It will be done in a moment. Anyway, that's the beauty about Eclipse actually. I mean, you can just, the installation procedure is just a matter of unzipping it. As a matter of fact, even if you have a super duper Eclipse configuration, meaning you have taken the basic Eclipse and you installed like a whole bunch of plugins on top of it, you can simply zip up your whole Eclipse installation again and actually unzip it on a different computer. It will still work. So it's this portability that is, well, in my opinion, is one of the reasons that Eclipse is a very good IDE. So there we go, we're unzipped. So let me now for a moment go to the folder where I unzipped it, which is under my C, Eclipse. And then to run it, the only thing I need to do is actually run Eclipse. So just for convenience, let me just create a shortcut to my desktop. There you go. Rename it. There you go. Move up a little bit. Let's just run it. So there you go, Eclipse, you know. Okay, the first thing that Eclipse asked me to do is indicate where I would like to create my workspace. So workspace is basically a folder on your hard disk where all your projects will be located. So typically I like picking a convenient folder for that. So I'm just going to name it recording workspace, also directly under my C, basically for easy access. It doesn't really matter where you create your workspace. The only thing I would not suggest to do is putting your workspace or your Eclipse installation somewhere under your program files. In one of the earlier versions of Eclipse, which was Eclipse Europa, so that's a very long time ago, I had some problems on the programming files, so I haven't installed it on the program files ever since. It's pretty well possible that right now it does work, but nah, anyway, I never tried, so I wouldn't suggest it. So I'm on my workspace here, and I'm going to use this as my default workspace to basically avoid seeing this prompt every single time. So, okay. Takes a while to start up. Well, after installation, this is the first screen you'll see. You can access the tutorials if you like, or the samples, the overview. I normally just skip that and go directly to the workbench. So this is the Eclipse workbench, the place where you will be working on pretty much all your projects. So first thing that you would need to do, is just as an extra check, is check whether or not Eclipse has detected your Java project, your Java SDK. So for that I'm going to go to Window, Preferences, then I check under Java, and then Installed GREs. And I can see that actually Eclipse has found my GRE7, installed under Program Files, Java GRE7. Even though I can perfectly well run Java projects here, I have the habit of changing the GRE folder to the JDK folder. Mostly so Eclipse, as and when he needs it, knows where to find all the extra executables as well. Change to JDK7 and finish. Okay. So now we are basically ready to get started. We can start creating our very first Eclipse Java project. So for that I'm going to go File, New. And as I mentioned, I'm simply going to do a normal Java project in this demo. So I'm going to choose Other, Java, and then Java Project. So let's just call this project, in style, of course, Hello World. I'm going to use my default GRE, which is JDK7. I could have just picked this one as well. It doesn't make that much of a difference. Then I'm going to say next, and yes, it's fine to use a source folder there, and then finish. Okay, now Eclipse is prompting me whether or not I want to open Java Perspective. So what does this mean? Eclipse has got what you called perspectives, and perspectives are essentially configurations of your workspace. Meaning, if I go to Java Perspective, the code coloring, the code completion, some of the buttons are displayed in such a manner that you can optimally, efficiently program a Java program. As a matter of fact, there's a G2E perspective as well, which is more optimized for developing Java EE applications. Even though the difference between Java and Java EE are not that big in terms of layout. Let's just say I want to switch to Java Perspective. Yes, you can remember my decision because you don't have to ask me every time I create a Java project. Okay, so there you go. And Eclipse has actually adjusted the workspace to some extent. It's switched in Java Perspective now. Like I said, the difference between Java Perspective and Java EE Perspective are not that terribly big. However, later you will see the debug perspective, which is totally different. So that will indicate to you why you have these different perspectives and why that is actually useful. Okay, so let's just create a very simple Java program. So for that, I'm going to create a new class. And I'm going to create some package, let's just say edu.example. And I'm gonna name this class Hello World class, and I want to generate the public static void main method. So there you go. There's my main method. And to demonstrate that everything works, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very simple system.out.println. Hello Eclipse World. Save. Well, basically I have two ways of executing this project. I can click on a Run As button here, or I can right click on a project and say Run As Java Application. And as you can see, my console immediately came up, which is located at the bottom here, and shows Hello Eclipse World. Very simple program, nothing really that spectacular. Well, basically I would like to show for the remainder of this tutorial is how you can debug Java programs. Because that's a skill that will be extremely useful, especially when developing your GWT applications as well. So let's make my program a little bit more complicated, and as I said, I'm just going to make this up on the spot, so it's not it might not go that terribly smoothly. Anyway, let's just create a new class named calculations class. I don't want the main method in this case. And inside calculations, I'm going to create a method public integer sum, which receives an integer a and an integer b as input, and is going to return a plus b. Oh, let's just do this a little bit more elaborate. Int total equals a plus b, return total. Okay, let's create another method, also returning an integer. Let's just call this one divide. Again, integer a divided by integer. Oops. That's what happens when you improvise. Integer a, integer b. Well, let's just name them integer c and integer d. So int result is c divided by d, return result. Okay, so I have some simple math operations here. And in this case, I am simply going to create an instance of my calculations class. And I'm going to invoke the sum method for the numbers, let's say, well, what shall we do? 38 and 4. And I'm going to print the result of x. After that, I'm going to say, well, int y is calc divide 8 by 2. And I'm going to print out the result again. There you go. So two simple calculations invoked on the calc class. So instead I'm going to run this project, and it shows that x is 42 and y is 4. So no problem there. But let's just deliberately create a mistake here. Let's just say I change 8 to 0. Let's see what happens now. Okay, I have what they call a arithmetic exception by 0, which is being executed on calculations Java line 11, which I can go to by clicking here. And I can see something goes wrong on this line. As a matter of fact, I already know what goes wrong because it's a simple example. I do a divide by 0, which is not allowed, and thus my Java compiler is telling me cannot divide by 0, arithmetic exception. That was not so much the point. Of course, I was well aware that I was making this mistake. What I would like to show at this moment is how I can successfully debug this. One way is by simply going to the line and then perhaps derive already what is wrong, but say in more complicated problems I may not be able to determine that. So sometimes it's useful to step through the program and see where exactly things go wrong and what are the values involved. So for that we're going to use breakpoints. And in this case I'm going to create a breakpoint at the start of my program. Meaning when I execute this program in debug mode, which I will demonstrate in a moment, the program will stop at this point and allow me to step through my program step by step. So there we go. To run this in debug mode, I basically will have to say debug as Java application, or alternatively I can right click on a project, debug as Java application. So there we go. Oh, that's my firewall. That will probably not happen on your computer. So now my Eclipse is asking me, hey, you're debugging something and I've run into a breakpoint. Would you like to go to debug perspective? Yes, of course I would like to do that. So I say yes, and since I don't want to be asked again, I just say remember my decision. So now it's actually showing me that he stopped at line number 9, which is this line. Moreover, in my top corner I can actually see the value of all the variables in that particular class. Currently nothing really much going on there. After which I can use these buttons to actually go through my program step by step. Step over means simply go to the next line. Step into, which I will demonstrate in a moment, actually means step into the method call that I'm currently invoking. I will show you that in a moment. The stop button here will actually mean, or terminate will mean terminate the program. After that the program will stop. And the resume button will actually just resume the program regardless of the breakpoint until it hits the next breakpoint or crashes or reaches its end of execution. Okay, so in this case I want to step over. So as you can see, I now went to the next line. I want to, well, say for example if I want to see what's happening inside this sum method, I can at this point say step into, after which I go to the calculations class and actually see that I'm inside sum. By hovering over, I can actually see that the value of A is 38 at this point. The value of B is 4. Moreover, I can also see it here in my top right corner that A has a value of 34 and B has a value of 4. Okay, if I step over the next line, I can see that the variable of total has been created, which is the result of this line, and contains a value of 42. After which I can just say step over again to return to my, basically return to my hello world class. So step over again. I can see that X now contains 42. And I can see the same thing here as I mentioned by hovering over it. Then step over again. At this point I'm about to execute calc divide. If I were to press step over at this point, the program would actually crash. But since I want to investigate what happens, I'm going to say, well, step into. So now I'm here. I can check the values. Well, C is 8, D is 0. And at this point I can already realize, hey, if I'm going to divide C by D and D is 0, naturally I'm going to get a divide by 0 error. So of course I can step over it and see the crash, or I can simply say resume and resume again, and then indeed it will crash as expected. So switching back to my Java perspective, using these buttons I can switch between the perspectives, so debug and Java. I can actually fix the error in my hello world class by saying, well, I don't want to divide it by 0, I want to divide it by 4 as well. Save, after which the program should run successfully again. Okay, so this is basically what I wanted to show for this first tutorial. How to install Java, how to install Eclipse, how to create a simple Java project, and how to debug in Eclipse. So I hope you found this tutorial informative, and next time I'll continue by showing you how to install the Google Web Toolkit plugin. and yeah, perhaps how to do an initial setup of a Google Web Toolkit project. Okay, until next time.